Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the new CGIAR and also on behalf of almost 100 colleagues from the CG who are present here in this week and who have indeed organized many side events and have had many opportunities to speak to you. So I will actually limit myself to some of the key messages that we have under this very relevant theme. The theme of the afternoon is beyond competition to collaboration. That's extremely relevant for the new CGIAR because while many people have referred to the CGIAR as the CG system for a long time, in fact, these really were 15 independent research centers that were, of course, collaborating. Islands of collaboration here and there, but in a sea of competition, frankly. So the new CGIAR was very much about this theme of beyond competition to collaboration, more joint research programs, but it was also about better partnership with others outside the CGIAR. So I'm pleased to address exactly this theme of the afternoon in my brief words to you. And I have a few key messages that I'm like to introduce here. If I don't get to the other slides, with apologies to my many colleagues who would like, of course, each of them to show one slide about their program. The most important messages are right here. In the CGIAR, we used to be held accountable for our publications. Just like in academia, I was a director general of one of the institutes, and you would get an evaluation. 3 wise men would come and they would ask, how many publications are your scientists making? Are they in high impact journals? And that was pretty much the bottom line. A very important shift for the CGIAR is that we are now saying to each of our research programs, we want to hold you accountable for development outcomes. Of course, they still have to have good publications, but we really want to achieve development outcomes. We don't just want to come up with a new variety of drought-resistant maize. No, we want to actually make sure that we contribute to millions of farmers having access to that same new variety. To make sure that the science and technology-led innovation that we're all about is actually adopted and goes to scale. Of course, that many of our researchers say, but can we suddenly deliver development? They doubt it. And they're right. We don't expect our researchers to become development organizations. But we do want them to make sure that they understand what is the impact pathway. How does the innovation that researchers develop move through an impact pathway to end up in the hands of farmers and have impact? And then you realize we cannot do that alone. We can only do that with partners. So partnerships become, instead of a cost, and that is often the thinking, if I have a partner, I have to share my budget, there is less money for me. It becomes a critical means to achieving our mission. A big cultural change. So more results through effective partnerships. Now, of course, our mission hasn't really changed. We're still all about sustainable intensification by and for the poor. What you may not realize is that Africa is our largest priority. More than half of the investment of the CGIAR is in Africa. You probably know that 4 of the 15 centers have their headquarters. You may not in Africa. You may not know that almost all the other of the 15 centers have a large number of offices and a large number of staff right here in Africa. More than half of the total investment of the CGIAR is focused on Africa, and we are totally committed to see that we have effective partnerships with FARA, with the NARS, with the private sector to deliver development outcomes. A key step for us is that we have realized that the CADA process that has gone on for more than a decade actually provides an excellent opportunity for us to help achieve those development outcomes. Probably for a long time, we as researchers didn't really pay enough attention to CADA. CADAP was developing here, we were doing our thing. We were doing good research in this site. We weren't necessarily thinking, are those aligned with the priorities of the countries? Now, we were nudged along by a number of our partners, and there is now a process called the Dublin process that is focused on aligning the priorities of CADAP with the priorities of the CGIAR. Or rather, I say that wrong, we in the CGIAR make sure that we align our priorities with the demand that is expressed through the CADAP priorities. We have signed an MOU with the African Union earlier in the year, and actually just a few hours ago in the room next to this one, the CEO of NEPAD signed an MOU with World Fish, one of our centers, to have concrete collaboration on our aquatic program. We are contributing to the science agenda. We're having a whole series of meetings to, if you like, coordinate the priorities of CADAP with our CRPs. And when I spoke with Dr. Fina Opio, the director of Asareca earlier this week, she was very positive. She said, we had this meeting in May, and you know, afterwards, I've seen at least 3 or 4 initiatives where these CRPs are now coming together with the countries, and they are coming up with concrete activities to work together. So we believe that this is an excellent opportunity, and we want to make the most of it. Of course, we are committed to the same things as we've been discussing here the whole week. Hunger, zero hunger is an excellent, I think, political priority that helps put agriculture back on the agenda. We are committed to the same agenda everybody else is here. Probably new is that we are realizing that climate change is such a big risk, not just for our children or our grandchildren, but for the small farmers today. A large part of our ability to grow food is at risk, and what that means, you know, we've all seen maps like that, but when you translate that in concrete examples, for coffee for instance. Now I have a Colombia picture, I'm sure this is similar in Africa, but coffee farmers in Colombia, a 2% change in temperature means that the range where they can grow coffee moves 400 meters up the mountain. Big challenge. So either we help develop coffee varieties that can grow under these better conditions, or they lose the farm. Big challenges. Well, I won't speak more about our mission, it's the same as you. I'm basically underlining here that what we are all about is what all other speakers are all about. Sustainable intensification. It hasn't really happened in Africa. There we have just increased the area under land. It has, of course, happened in the past, quite a long time ago now, and this is in a way the glory of the CGIAR. The trick will be, can we do something similar to that? Can we really have sustainable intensification in Africa? And are we ready? Is the CGIAR ready for that? Well, I won't go through this in detail, but in 2008, when those food prices went up and we had a sort of an evaluation of the CGIAR, we concluded we were not really ready. We were 15 independent centers implementing a very large number, some 3,000 small projects, very difficult to have large strategic programs, not very good funding, you know, a couple of decades of poor funding for agriculture, had led to this mentality of everybody is hanging on to their dollars and we don't want to share. That had to change. We do have a new CGIAR now. Amazingly, the donors have come together, created a multi-donor trust fund at the World Bank that last year received more than $500 million. Last year, the funds for the CGIAR were 20% up. The last 4 years, we grew on average 12%. That beats some of the best economies in Africa, I think. Almost Chinese growth numbers. We haven't had this in decades. Now, these new resources, of course, give us a big responsibility. We'll have to soon show what the impact of all that money is. And it also gives us an opportunity to change our mentality. Back to the theme of this afternoon, a lot of us have to realize that with a larger pie comes a different responsibility to share with our partners. I think we are doing that. But we are aware that when we ask our partners how they see the CGIAR, they have quite a different perception than the CGIAR itself. I've been in this new job for about a year now, and in the first 8-9 months I visited each of the centers, And each of the centers would say, we have a strong emphasis on partnership. We have many, many partners. But then when we went to the outside, usually in fora like this, people would be polite and say, yes, you know, we're happy to partner with you. But then you have them one-on-one, they would be pretty critical. They would say, okay, you have lots of expertise, but you're not really sharing resources, you're not transparent, it's very difficult to get in. When are you going to change that? Well, we are changing that. So I think in the new CGIAR, we are committed to having a different attitude to partners. And I do think that this cultural change comes from the very heart of it, from saying we really will be held accountable to deliver development outcomes, and we cannot do it without partners. That's the bottom line. We are very excited about the science. We are very excited about the life science evolution, the new opportunities that gives, the way that brings young people back to agriculture, the fact that agriculture, through this change in basic biology, has become such a dynamic sector. For 20 years, people all wanted to work in IT. You wouldn't send your kids to become a farmer or to become an ag researcher. Now that change is so rapid in genomics and genetics, and in fact it's such an exciting area of science, we see a whole new generation of young people come back into agricultural research. The challenge is to work on capacity building of those people together. We hear many good stories of the NARS, working on the people who are behind the podium, say, to work on capacity building 20 or 30 years ago. But some of that has been lost. And we are definitely committed to work together with the NARS partners, to work together with the private sector on this new agenda and make sure that young people not only want to be farmers, they also want to be agricultural researchers, and they work with us on this exciting agenda. Now, a lot of this is about accountability. I'll wrap up. I actually have a whole series of slides after this on each of our programs, but I think you'll have to find somewhere else how that works exactly. I don't have time for that this afternoon. But the bottom line for us is we have a new commitment to help deliver development outcomes that link directly to the SDGs, that link directly to the CAADP goals. So I'm showing this complicated slide because we are hard at work to say, how do we do research? It leads to outputs. How do those lead to outcomes? How does that lead to impact? And are we willing to be held accountable for that? And are we willing to create effective partnerships to deliver that? Now that is, if you like, what we are all about in the new CGIAR. We have a series of programs that we think of not as CGIAR programs, but as partnerships. So yes, it brings together the CG centers working on rice, for instance, IRI, Africa Rice, and SIAT, but it also brings together the key partners outside, whether that's IRD in France, or CIRAN in France, or GIRCAS, or hundreds of other partners. And those partnerships are no longer just about science. They're about taking science to impact. Science partnerships upstream, development partnerships further downstream. Making sure that we come up with innovations, that we test those at the scales of tens of thousands, but that we understand how we can take that to millions. That's pretty much our key messages. I have lots of nice slides, but you'll have to pick those up from our websites about each of our programs. I did have one slide that shows how some of our programs are building on the Sub-Saharan Africa Challenge program of FARA, how that links to our humid tropics and dryland system. I just wanted to get that last little pitch in, but I think these are my conclusions, Mr. Chairman. The new CGIAR is focused on delivering outcomes, more than half of that in Africa. We absolutely want to align the priorities of CAADP with our CGIAR programs, and we're ready to invest in partnerships with many, but certainly with FARA, with the sub-regional organizations, and with all the members. We stand, I think, ready to respond to Africa's needs. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was clapping very hard because this is a very good news to hear CGIAR, the new CGIAR. I think they have, the way they have reformed, I am the testimony. 2 months ago, we organized in Kadesa all CGIAR centers to a workshop, 3-day workshop, to say how are we going to work with Kadesa. The response was overwhelming. Everybody was ready to work, not to compete, but to collaborate in terms of, that is excellent. And I think for CGIAR, we've been talking about you for many years. And I think we are seeing some new, vibrant shift of mindset from CGIAR, and we are really excited about it. And we are leaving a testimony in Kadesa to say, well done, and I think we will support you and we will work together in investment and also doing research. Thank you so much for that nice talk.